Imagine the fun you'll have at your wedding, one of life's most treasured moments. In each episode, hear from leading wedding professionals as they share with you insider tips and personal advice for a magical wedding. Welcome to the Indian Wedding Podcast. Here to help plan your wedding with style and grace are your hosts, Kunal and Jinal Sampat.
Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Indian Wedding Podcast. Planning an Indian wedding is not for the faint heart. Even if you have all the financial resources at your disposal, your wedding partners can elevate your wedding experience. One lesser-known wedding partner is your honeymoon travel advisor. Honeymoon travel planning can be stressful, even if you know how to book flights and hotels with a click of a button. To help you plan your honeymoon travels, we invited Hao Tang at Besvisor on the show. Hao is passionate about serving his clients and helping them plan an epic honeymoon. In this interview, Hao shares how a luxury travel advisor can help you plan your honeymoon travels. There's a lot that goes on with researching and planning a great honeymoon, such as getting access to the finest resort amenities and planning meaningful experiences for you and your partner. What we love the most about Hao is that he himself has experienced many, if not all, resort properties that he recommends to his clients. I hope you enjoy the special conversation with Hao Tang on the Indian Wedding Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Indian Wedding Podcast. Gina and I are super excited to cover this topic. Travel is very near and dear to us, and what you're about to share with us really can change how brides and grooms have an amazing experience after their wedding. Indian weddings tend to be quite I don't want to use the word stressful, but they are in many ways. There's just so much going on with big families and
Right.
all the events and so on and so forth. And even if people didn't have all of that, just kind of having to relax and be with one another. So the topic of our conversation is luxury honeymoon travel, and there's no other better person on earth that we could think of to have on the show. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super excited. And yes, Indian weddings have always looked very interesting to me. It always looks so extravagant. It looks like something out of a Disney movie.
Right.
Right. So to kick off our interview, I wanted to ask you, there are so many fantastic places for the couple to travel to. So how do they actually narrow down where should they spend their time for their honeymoon?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, one that everyone faces because that's kind of like the starting point of the planning process. And to your point, it gets overwhelming. So, my advice to my clients is always that, hey, listen, let's take a step back. Don't feel like you have to visit everything at once, right? If you wanted to visit Italy, if you wanted to visit France, if you wanted to visit the Maldives, you don't have to do all of that on this same trip. You guys are going to be married for a very long time and you have plenty of opportunities. Think about, just think about the wedding you're going to have. Try to anticipate how you will feel the day after or the weeks after, and think about the type of experience you're going to want to have, in the first weeks of your marriage together. Is that something more relaxing or adventurous or maybe both? And then, once you have an idea of the type of mood and experience you're wanting to have, then match that against locations that you've been wanting to visit and see which ones match that mood the best, right? And then maybe that's what you should do for your honeymoon. And then anything else you haven't gotten to, you can visit those maybe for your anniversaries or other trips. There are plenty times and trips for you to check those places off of your list.
Right. So what's like the best way for people to like work with someone such as yourself? Like how does maybe can you paint that picture for us?
Yeah, so typically, I think what makes travel advisors like myself unique is that we really don't sell cookie cutter stuff. And that being said, even when we obtain new clients, often it's through referrals, right? So, for example, when I have a new client, typically it's through one of my existing clients. And at that point, my current client already know if I will or will not be a good fit for, their friends, right? So typically it's through referral, and then, you know, the client or the people who are getting married give me as much information as they can about themselves and what they have in mind and their preferences and things like that. And then we really start to have conversations and build an itinerary based on that. And then I give them options and we kind of narrow things down. But it's a really, I guess it's a very personal process, and no honeymoon really is the same. They're all very unique in their own ways. Surely sometimes they go to the same location, but every couple is different.
Right. No, that makes sense. So what are the exact steps involved in planning a luxury honeymoon?
Sure. So first, we usually have a phone conversation, like a consultation conversation, like you and I are having right now over the phone, and we chat about their goals, their budget, ideal locations if they have any, and then I would typically go back and do a preliminary um, draft of the places I think that would fit their needs and what they're looking for, and then I present those options to them, and then we continue the dialogue until we refine our things and we find the perfect location or the itinerary for them.
I
Right.
see.
So how does somebody like know they're working with a trusted advisor?
You know, to some extent, just to be blunt, you don't, right? So the trust factor comes in the referral, which is why I like referrals, because the referral essentially is the mutual friend, so to speak. In my case, I guess it's my current client and their friend. That's kind of the trust factor, right? That person is the one who says, hey, Hal or Besvisor is a trusted travel advisor, and then I think my friends who are trustworthy clients for you too. So that person served as the medium to kind of establish that trust. And then of course, as the conversation um, moves along between just me and the client, or the honeymooners in this case, they can tell. Usually, you can tell if a travel advisor knows their stuff, and I think that's where the trust comes in. Okay, this individual really does understand the luxury hotel industry, and also he or she really does understand what honeymoon is like and what the stress is like and what factors are important to us, right? So I think as the conversation moves along, if the client is feeling like the travel advisor is actually removing stress from them and getting things done and helping them narrowing things down to a resort they want to visit and they're happy about it, I think that's usually a good sign, right? If you're having to fight the travel advisor the whole way and he or she is not giving you the results you feel like you should be having, then you know that's probably a red flag, an indication that either the travel advisor isn't trustworthy or it may just be that you guys aren't a good fit. Um, you know, Being a good fit is a big deal, I think, in my line of work. It's not about producing volume, it's about finding the perfect clients who fit what you do and vice versa.
Right. So that sounds good. So when like in terms of the steps involved, is there like an intake form that you have couples complete to make it like a personalized experience for them? What does that process look like?
Right. So typically, for example, on my website, on the contact form, there's a form that gives me an idea about the client itself. Of course, that form itself doesn't specify as to honeymoon or anything else. But moving on, I will send them a form that basically in the conversation we have over the phone, I I basically note all of their preferences and everything they're looking for on their honeymoon. So that kind of serves as a form. I don't like to when it comes to something specific like a honeymoon, I don't want to pass along a form to the client because I feel like sometimes that constrains them into a box, right?
Mm,
So I like to have a conversation and take notes. I'll ask questions that I feel that's necessary for me to understand what they're looking for and what I should suggest to them and help them build, but I don't want to send a form that has 30 multiple choice questions, and you just fill it out, and then somehow I have an algorithm to spit out some type of package to you, so to speak, right? So
Right.
really, it's not a clear cut process. And again, this is where the fit comes in. Some people who are very wired differently might say, you know what, I really don't like that. I love Excel sheets. I love to be type A and have a process. I'd rather work with a travel advisor who's like that. And that is valid. And they should find an advisor like that, right? So, like I said, advisors all have different knowledge, different expertise, different relationships, and different ways they work. And the client needs to find one that fits best with them. And typically, I feel like on the first conversation or the first phone call, both parties are able to distinguish if the party on the other end is a good fit or not, and go from there.
Got
Sorry, I hope that answers your question. I
it.
know
It
I know
does.
the question you're asking me is very. I'm giving you a very open-ended answer,
Yeah.
but that's because I think my answer for most things is that it's it's really heavily based on context and circumstance. It's
Right.
not so dry and cut.
Yeah. Yeah. You said about something about the knowledge and that the advisor brings to the table. What kind of signals, or not signals, but what kind of, like, how does somebody know that the advisor has the right knowledge about that's aligned with their preferences? Is there?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think you should always ask an advisor,
Yeah.
where have you traveled to, right? But
Mhm.
I think this also depends on the person's knowledge of the luxury market,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
because think of it this way: if you're going to a car salesman and you're trying to buy a car,
Yeah.
if you don't know anything about a car, whatever question you ask that person, if they give you an answer, you don't really know if it's right or wrong, correct?
Right. Right.
So kind of the same thing
That's
with
great.
this.
Yeah.
You you want to ask an advisor about questions so you can see if she or he knows their stuff and are knowledgeable.
Yeah.
But if you don't know anything, in some ways it's kind of pointless, right?
Right.
You
Right.
you really want to know if they're giving you the good, the answer you're looking for, you should be looking for. But in this case, I think most advisors nowadays have some type of website, or in my case, Instagram. So I like to usually point clients to my Instagram and say, hey, listen, if you go take a look at my Instagram, these are all photos. I only post photos of places I've been to myself. Take a look at these resorts and hotels.
Yeah.
Tell me if you think that fits your standards or exceeds it.
Yeah.
If it does, then I am at least uh, on par with your taste, if not, uh, you know, further along. So that way I'm in a place where I can advise you and guide you, right? But if you go to my site or my Instagram page and you see all the places I go to and you think to yourself, oh, I would never stay here. These are subpar to me. And I hate to use that word because it makes it seem so pretentious, but it's not.
Right.
Then odds are I'm not the right travel advisor for you, because you clearly know more about the industry maybe than I do, right?
Right.
Um, you're right. It's not a again, not a science, but typically, I think if you look at where the your advisor has been, ask them where they've been to, is a way to see their portfolio, right? If you ask them where they've been and they tell you they really haven't been anywhere, well then, how could you advise someone on where to go if you've never been anywhere?
Got it. Yep.
Right. No, that's
And can I
mm,
add?
yeah.
Sorry, can I add? And that's one of the problems, that's one of the reasons so many of my clients who are also members with American Express Platinum or American Express Centurion, which is the black card,
Yeah.
they still come to an advisor like myself. Even though American Express has a hotel booking and concierge team that can book you all the luxury properties that I do, the problem is the concierge on the phone work in a phone call center, right? Nothing wrong with that. But the fact that they're actually reading a script, or they're being told by their senior management what properties to suggest. They've themselves never been anywhere. So my clients view that as a negative. How could they advise me where to go if all they're doing is reading out of a brochure as to, oh, you want to go to Paris? Well, then you should visit these 10 hotels. Any of these 10 will be considered luxury. Whereas in someone like me or another advisor who've been to Paris and stayed at all 10 hotels will say, you know what? There are 10 hotels in Paris that are considered luxury, but they're all different in these ways. And depending on what your personality and preferences are, this one will absolutely work and not work for you. right?
Right. I'm so glad you mentioned the credit card side of things, and even people that have access to concierge services through their credit cards, such as the American Express Platinum cards. What you're saying is even those people are coming to you because they get to hear from somebody who's been to those hotels and has experienced it themselves versus somebody who's kind of reading a script, and has probably not experienced the property themselves. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. And that's really only just one part of it because then American Express has they have a contract with the various hotels. So if you're booking through American Express concierge, what you're getting is a set of amenities, but nothing beyond that.
Yeah.
Whereas an advisor like myself, I will give you the same set of amenities, but in addition to that, I may call up the general manager or the sales manager who I know from working with them or having been to the hotel and say, hey, listen, John, I have a client, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, who just got married. They're coming your way in about a month. Can you make sure you look after them and make sure we can upgrade them at check-in or even now or do something special for them, right? So there's also that personal relationship where American Express does not have, right? The agents at American Express Concierge does not have a personal contact at each resort that they call and speak to on your behalf for.
Right.
Right, right. That's great. So I wanted to ask you, what makes a honeymoon? What are the details that makes a good honeymoon a great honeymoon?
I think it's actually coming away feeling like it met your expectations in the sense that it's how you actually envision your honeymoon. And that is basically, if I try to make this scientific, as checking off as many of your personal preference boxes as possible,
Mm.
right? So, so what that means is that what I mean by that is it's a given you want to go somewhere amazing, but um, for example, things like are the rooms set up in a way that you prefer? Are the beverages in the mini bar the ones you prefer? And are the butlers and the team aware of the fact that it's your honeymoon and they give you special attention? And do you actually feel relaxed? And do you come away more energized and happy versus stressed and feel like underwhelmed, right? So I think all those factors coming together is what makes a honeymoon special and something that you can look back with your significant other and always kind of you know sounds cheesy to smile every time you think about the experience and look forward to another trip together. I think if you can come away feeling like you're sad to leave the property, that's usually a very good sign. If you're sad to actually leave your honeymoon, you're not quite ready to go home, to me it's always a good sign. I'll always prefer a client feeling like wishing they had just 1 or 2 more days. I think that's the perfect time to leave, and usually, that's an A in my book.
Right. So what is the recommended duration till they actually feel like they want to go home for the honeymoon?
You know, uh, uh, broken record at this point, different for everyone. So I think on average, I want to say most people do somewhere between 7 to 10 days. I know a lot of Indian, not a lot, but I know a few Indian clients who does something more like three to 6 weeks, right? So
Wow.
everyone is different. There's no right or wrong. I think it depends on the couple and what their budgets are, what their durations are, and sorry, what their appetite is, and do they how much do they actually enjoy traveling. I hate the fact that a lot of people tend to, but I think a lot of people do actually tend to overestimate. A lot of people feel like they have to go on honeymoon for a minimum of like 10 days or 2 weeks, when in reality, I think depending on how far you're flying, let's just say you're in California, right, on the West Coast, and you're flying somewhere to, let's say, Cabo or something like that, where it's super, super close. You don't have to go for 10 days. That's close enough where you can just go for 5 nights even or 4 nights if you wanted to. If your budget allows you to do 4 nights and 5 nights extremely well versus 10 to 14 nights, that's more average, then I will always say, quality over quantity, and even, 5 nights could feel like a proper honeymoon if you're not traveling far. Now, if you're flying from the West Coast, California, to Maldives or Australia, then yes, of course, 4 nights, 5 nights are going to be too short because it's going to take you 3 days before you even adjust to the time zone.
Right, right. So do you recommend people visit more than one location slash resort during one honeymoon, during their honeymoon, or should they just focus on spending time at one location, assuming it's the average 7 to 10 day? Um,
Yeah, I think, if the couples are adventurous at all, I do love the idea of visiting multiple locations
well,
versus just one. But you have people who do just want to do nothing but relax on the beach, and there's nothing wrong with that. So for those people, they tend to be for people who want to visit one location,
yeah,
they usually know that. That's not a question they ask, should I visit one? Or they'll just tell you, I want to go to a beach, I want to unpack and not have to move or do anything until I go home, right?
yeah,
Um, Typically, anyone who's curious if they should visit more than one property or one location, usually is probably a good idea to actually see more than one location. I think there's a bit of excitement, and I love the idea of mixing something a bit adventurous with something relaxing. So, if you could go to, uh, for example, like I love the idea of going to maybe Rome or going to Rome or somewhere European or Paris or something like that at the beginning of the honeymoon, and then finish the honeymoon nearby a water somewhere, right? That could be Lake Como, that could be Lake Garda, that could be a lake, Lake Lucerne, Switzerland, or a beach somewhere in south of France, and then fly home, right? Always relax right before you come back from the honeymoon, because I think your adrenaline's still going high at the beginning of the trip, and that's a good fit for exploring a city and going out and doing hikes or doing daily, walks throughout the city. So yeah, sorry. I'm a fan of seeing more than one location.
great.
Okay. So how do couples plan their excursion during the stay? Do they get advice from someone like you, or it's up to them what they want to do throughout the day?
Well, it's always up to the client, and each client's different. Some clients know exactly what they want to do. For example, a lot of clients who want to go to visit, let's say, a location like Machu Picchu, right?
Hmm.
They typically have already done so much research on their own that they know exactly what they want to do. They will either not ask me for advice on excursion at all, or they may just say, we want to see XYZ, and can you ensure that either the hotel can assist in finding us a local guide, or can you find us one? And that's where I step in and help them find someone to hold their hand while they're in a foreign country. Of course, place like like London is very different than a place like Machu Picchu, right? London is a foreign country, but it's really not all that different. It's easy to navigate. Whereas in Machu Picchu, it really helps to have someone who speaks the local language, know the culture, and actually understands what you're doing, right? Because it's a location you don't want to be without help and guidance. So there's multiple channels that they can seek help when it comes to excursions, but usually the hotel typically have a ton because, as you can imagine, any luxury property usually have a super long list of excursions and guides. Now, I will say they typically could charge a bit more for you. In some locations, I do go off the beaten path and find a guide, a local guide or vendor that I have done business with over the years, and I know he or she um, is a better fit than what the hotel recommends.
Right. Right, that makes sense. Yeah. So, and I also feel like some of the excursions that are planned by the hotel tend to be much higher quality. Not, I mean, I've tried both. Some that I just kind of picked out on the internet or just was there and I try to
Right.
follow them carefully, and it doesn't really work out that way.
Right.
Um,
Like simple things like renting a boat, for
yeah,
example. There are companies that do
Right.
take a boat around the island from outside versus if you rent a boat from hotel, I think it's always much better.
yeah,
Right, and I will say this: hotel always give you the option, especially luxury hotel, and if they know that you're doing a honeymoon, typically my recommendation to clients is that if you're doing any type of excursion, if you can do it private, always splurge and do it private, right? Because you, especially on a honeymoon, there is nothing like doing things with a group of strangers. You just do not want to put yourself in a situation where you're basically flipping a coin, hoping that you're stuck with people that you enjoy, right? If it's people who are you view to be annoying or loud or whatever,
Yeah.
it would ruin your entire day. So I always think that, to your point, going through the hotel, you pay more, but sometimes, and it's not always, but sometimes you do get more. And going private is always the way to go for a honeymoon. It reduces the risk of running into people you don't enjoy being around.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We've made those mistakes in the 10 years ago. So, one of the challenges we personally experience is having to figure out great meals that have a local experience. What can couples do in advance to plan their breakfast, lunch, dinner a day before, just so that they're not freaked out or stressed out, like when they're hungry?
Yeah, well, sorry, can I ask, do you mean for just the first day on site, or do you mean every single day during the entire honeymoon?
Uh, During the entire honeymoon, yeah.
Okay. Again, I think this depends on the location you're going to. Let's just say, and what I mean by that is, let's say you're going to somewhere like the Maldives, where you're going to beach resort, correct?
Right.
You more or less, you don't have that many options. You can ask. So I will typically send my client a menu from the resort. So I will say, hey guys, before you go on your honeymoon, here's the menu at all three of their restaurants and in room dining. Please just take a look, and this will give you an idea what you're dealing with and working with. So you're more or less pretty much at their mercy. Now, given that most luxury resorts should have chefs that can accommodate to any custom meals that you really want to have. Um, but aside from that, you're kind of stuck. And I would think to some degree that's actually easier because there's a menu. You can just choose from that. But if you're going to a place like Tokyo or Paris in a city, that's where it gets complicated because the options are endless.
Right.
And from my experience, I really think there's no shortcut. It really is something that the travelers themselves really need to go online and do research on their own through their friends, through online source, whatever. Because time and time again, I've seen travel advisors, I've seen hotels make recommendations, but food is such a personal thing. It's very difficult for someone else to pick it just right for you. Now, that being said, if this is a if this is a client I've worked with for many years and I know their preferences extremely well down to their palate, I could make recommendations for them and it could work. But for the most part, if it's a honeymoon couple that I've never worked with before and I don't know their palate that well, I could, make a few suggestions, but I would not leave that in someone else's hands. If I were them, I would still put in the time to make sure that they find some restaurants that they think they will really like. Um, I just I just think that food is a very personal thing, and having asking someone else to select it for you could go very wrong. I've seen that happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if a couple has logistical questions during their schedule, such as changes in their schedule, they want to change their flights or their hotel, they don't like where they're staying, so on and so forth. How do they deal with those kind of changes?
Yeah, so typically through me. So if they have any issues during their travel with their logistics, usually I'm the one who is in there to help them sort that out. Of course, it depends on how big the issue is as well, right? So if they have, let's say tomorrow morning, they're supposed to have a spot treatment at 8 o'clock. We're going on excursion at 9 o'clock, and they want to change the timing of that.
Right.
They could obviously call me or email me the night before or whenever, and I can make that change for them. But most likely, they would just call their butler or the hotel directly and make that change because it's faster and more efficient. But if
Absolutely.
it's something more serious, like a flight,
Yeah.
typically I'm monitoring the flights for them anyway. So usually I see the flight canceled or delayed before they are. So again, I'll go back to the case of Maldives because Maldives is a complicated one where you almost always have to take a seaplane from one resort to Malay's airport and then fly international. So if
Right.
if I see their international flights delayed, typically I would send an email to them notifying them, hey guys, your flights are delayed, but don't worry, I'm handling this. and then I will send an email to my friends at the hotel or call them and say, hey, listen, their flights are delayed. Can we make sure that we readjust and reschedule their seaplane flight from the hotel to Male accordingly, right? And if that means they're checking out late, can we get a late checkout? If the hotel's not booked, can they just stay in their room until they have to leave? If the hotel is fully booked, can we find them some type of a spot treatment room where they can spend the day at the hotel, and then before they leave, just change into that and then fly out, have a place to shower, right? So some of that logistic stuff, um, I do it on their behalf. I can do all of it on their behalf, but some of them, if they're insignificant enough, usually the client just handle it with a simple call to the butler.
That sounds great. The next thing Janelle is about to ask you, it's her favorite question. So have fun with
It
it.
is, yeah. We got honeymoon pictures got deleted, so this question is very important. I'm sure for couples that are planning their wedding. And this is about couples that want to take their pictures taken during their honeymoon because the locations are so nice, and it's just someone taking pictures of them would be nicer than them taking pictures of each other. Um,
Sure.
so how can they go about doing that?
That is actually something that I've seen a lot of people do nowadays. More and more people are actually doing photo sessions during travel. So I've seen a lot more hotels now have photographers on site. Not on site, but hotel vendors that photography vendors that they work with that they call for scenarios like that. Um, but also, I've seen clients actually just bring their own photographers from back home. Some clients really go over the top for certain things, but most hotels I work with actually have photographers that they can call and they'll bring on to the on site for a day rate that that you can pay, and then the photographer will take you guys throughout the entire resort and find the best spots and take the photographs for you, and then before you guys are able to leave, they can usually give you copies of the photographs digitally and physically, right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so basically they have to hire someone to follow along if they're going outside or be inside.
Yeah,
Just have them for
yeah,
Saturday.
but a lot of people are doing that these days, especially in Maldives. I would say Maldives, and when I go to Maldives, Seychelles, Bora Bora, I see it everywhere. Everyone is doing this. So most of those resorts have someone that they can call on to do things like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that
Yeah,
would be nice. I wish everybody did that.
do you have some favorite hotels in the Maldives that you can share, or not really?
Wait, sorry. I think the conversation cut out. Are you asking if there are favorite hotels I can share?
Yeah, in the Maldives. You said
Oh
Maldives
yeah,
a few times, so I was just curious. Yeah,
yeah.
curious what those were. Yeah.
So the Maldives, sorry, yeah, and I'm actually scheduled to fly back to Maldives again in July, so I have that on my mind. And of course, Maldives is a very popular honeymoon destination. So Maldives, I would say the top options for me in Maldives are probably Cheval Blanc, which is for anyone who doesn't know Cheval Blanc, they're owned by Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. So basically, think of as Louis Vuitton's hotel brand. That's probably one of my favorites in Maldives. And then Vila Private Island, which is actually a neighboring island to Cheval Blanc. So often I would advise clients to go to Maldives visiting Cheval Blanc and Vila Private Island on the same trip because you can fly to from Male Airport, fly into Cheval Blanc or Vila Private Island, and then take a quick boat transfer between the two resorts and experience the other one because both of those are two of the top properties in Maldives, and they are quite a bit different too. So it's a good way to experience both and just to give you a different flavor during the honeymoon, so you don't get bored. Aside from those two, I really do like. There's this one place I haven't been to yet. It opened recently. It's called Jolie. I do want to go to that one as well, and I think a lot of women will love that place because it looks very feminine but done extremely well. So that's probably I'm really looking forward to visiting in July. And a lot of my peers I've spoke with who visited has just spoke very highly of it. So those three, well, those two, Cheval Blanc and Mila, probably my favorite two. And then I will see about Jolie, which looks promising.
That's great.
They look nice.
Yeah, they look nice. We're looking at it as you say. We've been to the
Okay.
Sheraton Maldives. Um,
Okay.
yeah, but it was
Awesome.
it was a lot of fun. This was 8 years ago, but it was we
Oh,
went
wow.
with all our family, and it was amazing. So and that one we didn't have to take the seaplane, so I can imagine it being so much fun and so remote. If all these other hotels that you're talking about, was that for that one we just had to take a speedboat into to the hotel
Right.
from Male. Yeah.
Yeah, a good one I really like for speedboat transfer is Geely. Geely is very close. I think it's about a 25-minute boat ride, and they actually burned down last year due to unfortunately due to a fire, and they rebuilt last year, late last year. So it's kind of this iconic hotel in Maldives, very rustic, and they rebuilt it. So I'm looking forward to revisiting that in July as well. But speaking of, you guys, the Indian weddings, if you're getting married in India, Maldives is such an easy trip, right?
It's
I wish
amazing.
I lived that close to Maldives all the time.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, that's great. Thank you for those recommendations, and of course, um, I'll put those in the show notes. But people that are interested in working with someone like as yourself, obviously we'll get some special services and amenities like we talked about as
Yeah.
a result of that. So, can you share with us ideas on how brides and grooms can surprise each other with small gifts or experiences during their honeymoon? How should they go about doing that? And have you been involved in any of those type of situations?
Yes. So I think the most obvious things are things like, planning. The groom might want to plan some type of super romantic dinner on the beach or a private exclusive area somewhere like that, right? So
Yeah.
typically, then I work with the hotel and say, hey, listen, they're arriving on this date, but on this date, let's make sure we do something special for dinner. Can we plan a romantic, uh, candlelit dinner, or maybe take a boat to this private little um, sandbar or island and set up a special lunch or dinner that's just the two of them, feels extremely remote, or and of course have fire lit if possible, things like that. Those are kind of the most obvious things, but people always really appreciate it because the setting just so phenomenal to be by yourself somewhere remote and have this it feels unnatural to have this like over the top meal with champagne and fine china and linens and everything on a sandbar in the middle of nowhere, right? Um, and then also a lot of times what we will do is the groom will send me photos of him and the bride, and vice versa, and then I'll usually have the hotel frame the photos, right? Especially sometimes if there's a pet involved, I'll frame a photo of the two of them with their pet and have that set up in the room with their favorite, with their favorite chocolate, champagne, etc., and a really nice personal note. And then when the couple arrives, especially the bride, often will see that photo and makes her feel like she's obviously on a luxury holiday, but same time it feels like a piece of home is with her as well. A photo really goes a long way. And then some of the more extravagant things people have done is that sometimes the groom has invited his and the bride's family along the first portion of the honeymoon without telling her.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
Was that a
so
surprise or a big surprise? I'm not sure.
right, but that is a very special like surprise, right? That's not something that most people would do, but it goes a long way because some people are very close to their family, and to surprise them, on the honeymoon with their family is pretty special. So for some clients who are, doing a month long or longer honeymoon, they may choose to do the first week or 2 weeks of the honeymoon with their family. And sometimes that's a surprise to one of the parties, right? Either the bride or the groom. And it's usually pretty well received, as you can imagine.
Yeah, I'm sure because after the wedding, everybody's so exhausted and they barely spend time with each other's parents. So this may be the
Exactly.
yeah, makes sense though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, is there anything that we should have asked and we didn't ask you?
Um, actually, there is one thing I've done before, and this is actually not, sorry, going back to the same question, surprises. I've done this a couple of times. It's on Singapore Airlines. I've had clients fly on Singapore Airlines suites, and mid-flight, the entire team came out with a cake
Oh wow,
to congratulate them. I know that's not like
that's
a
epic.
big deal, but it's a surprise, right? Because people don't expect that on the plane. So the entire team came out and
Yeah.
surprised them with a cake and candle, and it went a long way.
That's
But no, I think that's everything. I mean, it's a vast area, but I think we covered quite a bit of it, and I kind of brain dumped everywhere.
Now people are gonna call you and say, "Hey, can we get a cake on our Singapore Airlines flight?" You're setting a very
Right.
high bar up there. Yeah, yeah, it's awesome. This was really great. We really thank you for taking the time to do this. We'll put links to your website and your Instagram handle, in the show notes, and so that people can find where you are. And well, we thank you for your time. And is there anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
No, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it. Sometimes it's just nice to chat with people about traveling because it is a passion of mine. So I appreciate you guys giving me the chance to come on and just share with everyone what we do and talk about travel. So, no, that's it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Hal.
thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Indian Wedding Podcast. For more exclusive time and money-saving tips, head over to sampatjewelers.com/podcast.